Following is the Arizona Racing Commission meeting held on May 10th, 2018 at 1110 West Washington, Suite 250, Phoenix, Arizona 85007, and it is the 662nd regular Arizona Racing Commission meeting.
Well, I'd like to welcome everybody and call to order
Now do that.
the 662nd regular Arizona Racing Commission meeting. Today is May 10th, 2018, and Ms. Goodwin, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Garay.
Present.
Commissioner Heupel.
Here.
Commissioner Lawless.
Here.
Commissioner McClintock.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right. So the items of new business today are 1, J&J Equine Enterprises, LLC, doing business as Yavapai Downs, consideration of temporary permit application for 3 years, fiscal years 2019, 2020, 2021. And I think we might need to go into executive session for a minute just to get a clarification on what we can do. So I hate that because there's a big crowd and you guys are going to get stuck outside. But
I think we'll complete it.
do we need a motion?
I make a motion to move into executive session. Second.
Okay. Time is 10:01, and we are adjourning the first open session to go into executive session. Second. The following is the second open session of the 662nd regular Arizona Racing Commission meeting held May 10th, 2018 at 1110 West Washington, Suite 250, Phoenix, Arizona 85007.
All right. Well, we'd like to move back into the meeting. Cassie?
Okay, it is now 10:10 a.m. We are back on record after the first executive session. I'm going to do a brief roll call. Commissioner Garay.
Here.
Commissioner Heupel.
Here.
Commissioner Lawless.
Here.
Commissioner McClintock.
Here.
Thank you. We again have a quorum.
Okay. Well, I just saw the sign-in sheet, and I see we have 4 people that would like to speak regarding item number 1. So, Bob Hutton, you were first on the list.
Bob Hutton, President of the HPBA. I would like to thank the Commission for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of J&J Enterprises and Corey Johnson. The HPBA is in full support of J&J Enterprises in obtaining a license to conduct their race meet starting in 2019. The reopening of Yavapai Downs facility is of vital importance for thoroughbred and quarter horse industry in Arizona to survive and grow in the near future. The opening of Yavapai Downs gives Arizona horsemen the opportunity to participate in year-round racing without leaving the state. It will also be healthy for the other racing facilities due to the fact it will enhance Arizona breeding program while keeping our horse inventory in the state. It has been a pleasure working with J&J Enterprises and Corey Johnson and supporting them in their goal to open Yavapai Downs. Mr. Johnson has demonstrated throughout the country his passion for racing while offering horsemen the opportunity to run for good purses. I believe it is vital the license J&J Enterprises is applying for is only temporary. The HPPA would like to see J&J Enterprises' temporary license made permanent as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Kevin?
Good day. My name is Kevin Eckelberry, and I am an owner, trainer, and a breeder. And I would like to thank the chairman and everybody for letting me speak. It's very important that fight gets open. I've lived in Arizona for 40 years. I've never raced in the summer in Arizona. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know, my wife's really looking forward to being home, but I'm definitely looking forward to being here. And they've done everything up front and very easy to work with. And I would really, I know all the horsemen are looking very forward to opening. If you guys got any questions, we're glad to answer anything you got.
That's very good. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks,
Kevin.
Lloyd?
Lloyd Yother, the HPPA horse owner, breeder, and a long-time horseman in the state of Arizona. I too would just like to iterate what the last two gentlemen had to say about racing in Arizona. We need to get real about racing in Arizona and support all venues and all horsemen and unite and get some things done that we've been bickering between ourselves over the few years. But again, we're supportive of Yavapai. We'd like to see their temporary go permanent as soon as possible. We'd like to see things move forward and for betterment of racing in Arizona. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Lloyd.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Jerry, did you have something you wanted to?
Terry Sims, thanks for having me today with the hearing. I'll be very brief. I'm in favor of Yavapai Downs being part of racing in Arizona.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Jerry.
Mr. Chairman, I was unaware that we needed to sign up now, approach the podium.
Sure.
Good morning, Jay Wells with the Retail Park Foundation and Retail Racing. Yavapai having the chance to open back up is the breath of fresh air to this state. Horse racing has a chance to really raise its head and thrive. It's going to mean more racing for horsemen, more racing for horse fans, more taxes for the department, and we all live off of that and supporters. So we'd like to go on record and say the Retail Park Foundation and Retail Racing support this application and this permit wholeheartedly. Welcome aboard, guys. We give you good luck.
Thanks, Jay. Leroy.
Chairman, Commissioners, I didn't realize I was supposed to sign up, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to say, as National President of the HBPA, I've done a lot of work with Corey Johnson over the years, and he's been very stand-up guy. He's always done what he said he was going to do. We worked together in the Claiming Crown, he has Claiming Crown racing qualification races at Kentucky Downs. And the other thing, the Kentucky HBPA, he works well with them. I know the president, obviously, they're very well. In fact, the thing that I really impressed me about Corey is that he has extra purse money for the horsemen at Kentucky Downs. He can't spend it all, and he shares it with Ellis Park. And I think that shows how much he cares about the horsemen and the horse industry in Kentucky, and I'm sure he'll operate the same way here in Arizona. Thank you.
Thanks, Leroy. I saw their purse structure for 2018. It looks like they're blowing the roof off the horse racing. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I as well did not realize I needed to sign up or that we were going to speak like this, but my name's Loretta Brazier. I'm the Executive Director of the Arizona Quarter Racing. And the quarter horses are in 150% in favor of Yavapai opening up and running a summer meet. I've been listening to the different industries, the stakeholders, and the things that they want to bring. And I ditto everything that the boys just said. We need this badly. These people are wonderful people. I've met them personally, worked with some of them as well. The quarter horses, notoriously, our owners all have businesses and they work regular jobs. They don't want to leave the state. So the quarter horses will be in 150% participation up there. And so thank you for letting me speak.
I'm glad to hear everybody's on board behind the Yavapai Downs, because we were thinking about turning it down. But
Mr. Chairman, both of you, you've been here as long as I've been. Actually, you've been here longer, and I think for both of us, this is really an exciting day to see horse racing growing again here in Arizona. And Lloyd said something that I think was really important going forward. As I look at, I'm the dog representative, but I really believe in the horse racing. But what I see going on in Florida, that the greyhound industry is imploding on itself because it has no leadership. It is not willing to work with each other. What Lloyd said, you guys need to continue working together. You're on a good path, and I'm excited with where we're going. But please keep working together.
Can I call Tom?
Yeah, one question came up. So somebody from Yavapai, probably Tom, needs to come to the podium for a second, please.
author, J-Corp Partners for Yavapai Downs. I wish we were as enthusiastic as all these other guys. Just kidding.
Yeah. The revenue, you agreed, I guess, to escrow, is it 50% of the revenue?
I don't know if it's been
100%?
completely established yet, but some predetermined amount with the horsemen that, so that they, that just, so that if we're making money, we don't decide, it didn't work out, well, so that they know that money's there for purposes.
Okay. And if it was conditioned upon, for some reason, you guys not opening, that would the revenue go to the horsemen?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, our thought is it's for purposes whether we open or not. I can't imagine we wouldn't open, but if something happened,
something crazy
happened, that money's escrowed, and I don't know whether it's 2 signatures or whatever. We'd have to work out the mechanics, but it would be there for purposes.
Okay.
And are those agreements going to be signed, just a gentleman's agreement?
Yeah, I don't know where we stand on that, Dave. Do we? I'm gonna let Kurt tell you, Dave.
I'm in the midst of drafting it.
Okay.
And Leroy and I spoke about a week ago, and in conjunction with the horsemen and with us, we're going to put it all to paper. And we have agreed already to escrow the money. The exact terms of the OTB distribution is we're going to draft, and we talked about it considerably the other day.
Okay.
We've got taxes to pay and that kind of stuff, so that needs to be withheld.
Okay. That's
all.
That's what we wanted to know.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, did you want to say something? I noticed in your report that you recommended approval. Do you want to say something?
It's all been said.
Then I move we approve J&J DBA temporary permit for 3 years, fiscal years 19, 20, and 21.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded.
You need the dates
Yes,
and the approval of the dates.
If you would please amend.
Third dates.
Okay.
Amend your motion to include the dates on the attachment that we gave you on the
Okay,
record.
I'll amend my motion
Yes,
to
please.
include the 2019 Yavapai Downs live dates, 35 live dates, May 24, 25, 26, 27, June 1, 2, 8, 9, 15, 16, 22, 23, 29, 30, July 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 14, 20, 21, 27, 28, August 3, 4, 10, 11, 17, 18, 24, 25, 31, and September 1 and 2. Should I read them? And approve the simulcast dark days will be 351 days, beginning July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019.
Do I need a second? I'll second that.
Thank you. So, do we have a vote then?
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded. Let's, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. Commissioner Garay?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Enthusiastically.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, item number 2 is a request from J&J Enterprises, LLC, doing business as Yavapai Downs. You guys come up with a new name yet? Or are you just going to keep us in suspense? For approval of Ann McGovern as general manager. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Yavapai has requested the approval of Ann. She carries a rather strong resume on racetrack experience. She's here in the audience today, and I'm sure she'll approach the podium to address the commission. Everything looks to be in order, and the division recommends approval for Ann.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Ann McGovern. I appreciate you considering my application today, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I too think your resume looks stellar.
Thank you. When you're in a business long enough, as many years as I have, you kind of learn a few things.
So, yeah, we really don't have any questions.
I would like to thank the staff for being so helpful and patient with us through this process. They've done a great job.
All right, I entertain a motion to approve Ann as general manager.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome aboard.
Excuse me, Commissioner Garay,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless,
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel,
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock.
Yes.
Motion carries now. Congratulations.
Now all right, item number 3 is a reconsideration of the advanced deposit wagering between Rito and Churchill Downs Technology Initiatives Company, doing business as Twin Spires.
Are you guys going to have any executive session on this? Because otherwise I'll
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay.
I'd rather hear the arguments first and then go into
Yes.
executive session.
Okay.
Okay, so give me a moment to bring Mr. Vance on the line. We'll be answering.
Twin Spires.
Both of them.
I have Mr. Vance. who's
Yeah, she's
asked.
calling Vance, and then
Is Michael Foy here? Or is he...
Yes, he is. He's their attorney. He's Rito's attorney. Okay, I'm having difficulty getting him on the line with the number he gave me, so if you guys want to proceed, I'm going to choose how you can maybe I'll send an email and see if he has a cell phone number from
Sure, I do think I have his cell phone. So
Okay, if you'd like to come up, I don't think you want to put it on the number.
I guess those two microphones, that when you're talking into them, if you can get a little closer, so they can get a better signal.
Number you have dialed is not in service.
Dial 1, maybe.
can you hear me now?
Maybe didn't pay his phone bill.
Or it may be the fact that the line there isn't communicating outside the building.
Real quick test.
Carter Vance.
Hello, Mr. Vance. This is Cassie Good with the Arizona Department of Gaming Racing Division. I apologize calling you on your cell phone. We were trying the desk number. We were having technical difficulties getting you, so Mr. Foy gave me your cell phone number. We have the commission meeting in progress, and they're going to go ahead and start hearing this agenda item, and I'll let you know there's a possibility we will be going into executive session. If that happens, I'll disconnect the line and bring you back on after, okay?
I guess that's a no.
How you going to find out?
You don't like that answer.
Just really don't want it on the record, though. Yeah, it'd be on the...
Landline's probably his business number.
Carter Vance.
Mr. Vance, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, did you catch what I said earlier before we lost connection?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
See if he's at an office.
Are you at your office number?
I am.
The one that you had given me in the email?
To double check that.
Yes.
502-635-4638?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. You guys want me to try that one again?
Well, if he's gonna get cut off.
Are you in a place where you're going to keep cell connectivity, or do you want me to try that number again? Because we tried it earlier and there was no answer.
Oh, yeah, I'm at a place right now. I think I should be fine on cell service, so I can keep track from here, and hopefully it will stay on.
All right, then we're going to proceed with this agenda item. There is a high possibility that the commission will go into executive session. If that occurs, I'll disconnect the line with you and bring you back on when they reconvene in open session, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I guess we're going to hear what each side has to say, the reasons for keeping this agreement in place are.
Did we set time limits?
No, I think we need to set a time limit.
That would be entirely up to you, gentlemen.
In the past, haven't we used like 3-5-minute rule?
We generally give them 10 minutes, but again, that's entirely up to you how you would like to proceed.
And we do have, I see we have the bill, so we do have some control.
Yes, and I can, when they have 30 seconds left from the time that you prescribed, then I'll wave my pen so they can know to wrap up.
Okay, well, we've read your briefs, but we'll give you 10 minutes each to present your side of the case, I guess, even though it's not a case. And I don't know how do we decide who goes first? Rito?
Requested the reconsideration would be turf.
Okay, so Turf Paradise.
Good morning. My name is John Egbert. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to address you on this issue today. I'm with my colleague Carrie Hodges. We will be addressing the 3 reasons that we covered in our papers as to why we believe the contract as it is unlawful, does not comply with the statutory requirements. And those 3 reasons are, first, that Rito is not a qualified permittee under the requirements of the statute. Second, the contract ignores the statutory requirement that Twin Spires not accept wagers from Maricopa County without Turf Paradise's approval. And 3, the contract ignores the statutory requirement that Twin Spires pay to Turf Paradise its proportionate share of the source market fees. I'm going to turn the time over to Carrie to very briefly hit the highlights of those arguments, as well as address some of the arguments that were made by the filing by Rito, and then I will conclude with the summary of our position.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Carrie Hodges on behalf of Turf Paradise. I actually brought a few boards that I'm going to use that I think will help illustrate this in an easier fashion. And I know we were kind of pushed for time, so I'll move a little quicker through this than I intended. The first reason why this contract was unlawful and should have been approved relates to subsection N2 of the statute that we're talking about. And that's the statute that specifies who can enter into a source market fee agreement. And it's only certain qualified commercial live racing permittees who the legislature has determined have the ability to do that. Here's who they are, and this is in short form, plain English language, and then I'm going to give you the statutory language so we can look at this that way. But here's who they are. It's number 1, a track that meets the racing days requirement, and that's the 40 days for 12 consecutive years since 1992. Number 2, and this is 2A on this board, it's a new track in the same county as a track that meets the racing days requirement that replaces that track. So if Turf were to close up its shop because they built a new track, 2A would apply to Turf. 2B, it's, again, a new track in the same county as a track that meets the racing days requirement, and it conducts a racing program with the same type of racing as that track. So the most fundamental issue we have here at the outset is that RIEDO doesn't meet any of the requirements specified in subsection N2 to enter into a source market fee agreement that would allow the commission to issue an ADW permit. I have copies of the statute with the exact statutory language, and if I may approach, I'd like to hand them to you. I have way more than I need.
Oh.
Thank you. Now, what I've just handed you is just a piece of paper where we tried to blow up the statutory language of N2, and this is the language of N2, and all we've done with it is break it up according to the grammatical structure of the big block paragraph of this relevant language. And it makes it very clear in plain English what the legislature has done here. They've said a commercial live racing permittee in this state, number one, at a racetrack enclosure in a county where live horse or dog racing has been conducted for a period of at least 40 days per year for at least 12 consecutive years beginning after 1992. That's the racing days requirement. Number two, at a new racetrack enclosure in the same county, that county where there's a track that meets the racing days requirement that replaced the previously existing racetrack. Number three, and that's 2B here, at a new racetrack enclosure in the same county that conducts a racing program with the same type of racing on which the advanced deposit wagering is accepted. One of the things you saw in RIEDO's brief is that they tried to say RIEDO can qualify under this 2B exception, but the only way they get there is to ignore that the language that conducts a racing program with the same type of racing on which the ADW is accepted. They've tried to divorce that from what it modifies, and that's at a new racetrack enclosure in the same county. So this is the biggest, most fundamental problem with the contract. The second issue is, as Mr. Egbert said, that under subsection M of the statute, Turf Paradise hasn't approved Twin Spires to take bets out of Maricopa County. Subsection M states that before the commission can allow an ADW provider to conduct ADW, the ADW provider must secure the approval of the permittees in every county where the ADW provider will accept advanced deposit wagers. Now, RIEDO has said, and we agree, every county is not what that subsection literally says. Here's what it literally says. It says an ADW provider must annually secure the approval of the commercial live horse racing permittees in a county where the ADW provider accepts ADW. So based on a county, RIEDO argues, and we agree, this would be the typical understanding of language like this, that means any one county. The problem, though, is that in this statute, this is one statute with two subsections, right? In this statute, if you read a county to mean any one county, you've got a conflict with subsection N2 that we just looked at. If RIEDO can give the approval necessary under subsection M, if they can do that, then they're going to be trumped by subsection N2 because they can't qualify to approve a source market fee agreement there. Now, the law is clear that the legislature, we presume, the legislature doesn't enact superfluous statutory provisions. So we've got a conflict. How do we resolve it? Well, in this case, it's pretty easy. And that's because in the Senate fact sheet, the legislature made clear exactly what it meant by the language in subsection M. And that's that before wagers can be accepted, an ADW provider must secure the approval of, quote, all commercial tracks in Arizona counties that conduct live horse racing. So the legislature's intent is clearly stated in the Senate fact sheet, and what's more, when you apply this every county meaning to subsection M, it all makes sense. Subsection M and subsection N2 can now be read together consistently in a way that furthers the legislative purposes of this statute, and that's as follows. When you read this, subsection M as every county, subsection N2, and the way Turf Paradise is read as the plain language of the statute provides. N2 ensures that the large tracks in Arizona, the reliable, proven operators of racing meets in Arizona, only that select class of permittees have the ability to approve the source market fee agreements. And that's important. And it's important from the legislature's perspective because the legislature has an interest in ensuring that the revenues are maximized, not just for the tracks, but for the horsemen and for the state. It has an interest in ensuring that the reliable, proven operators of racing operations in the state are encouraged to stay in business and keep investing money. And this isn't theoretical, what I'm telling you. These are legislative interests that the Arizona Supreme Court has recognized in this state since 1981. In the case Arizona Downs, the Arizona Horsemen's Foundations. It's actually one of the cases that Reuto cited in its brief to support upholding the contract. And here's what the court said in that case. The state expects these same organizations, and it's talking about, in this case, Arizona Downs and Turf Paradise at the time. But the state expects these same organizations to operate in a manner which will develop the maximum amount of revenue for the state and at the same time provide a regulated form of entertainment for the public.
10 minutes are up. Thank you very much. If you want to wrap it up real quick, if you got anything.
Let me just address briefly, if I may, just the constitutional issue, because I understand that's really the biggest part of what Reuto's put in its brief, and I would like to respond to it.
Before you move, I do have a question on the fact sheet. Is that part of the law or just some sheet that's down there? And
Sure. Legislative history isn't binding. It's not. But just like prior interpretations of an agency, of its enabling statutes and regulations, when there's an ambiguity, when there's a conflict in legislation, this is something courts look to. Courts will look to the legislative history to try to understand the meaning. And here, it provides sort of the link that then makes sense of M and N2 and allows them to be read together.
The reason why I asked is because I'm just curious is if this was in the fact sheet, why it's really not clear, and then the law that was created by the legislative members.
And I don't know. That's part of the issue that comes up in all these situations where you have an ambiguity in a statute and a conflict is we're doing the best we can to discern the legislative intent and give a reasonable reading to the statute that makes sense of all its provisions. But briefly on the constitutional issue, I know Reuto's big point here is that in their view, this statute, if read the way Turf believes it should be read, that this violates the special laws provision of the Arizona Constitution. I want to make two quick points on that. First, it's not the role of this commission to determine constitutional issues. If Reuto wants to push that down the road, that's really an issue that needs to be resolved in court. But second, and most importantly, even if you want to think about that issue, even if you want to discuss it, there's no violation of the special laws provision. That three-pronged test that Reuto has set forth in its brief, this law meets it. This is a generally permissible, not an unconstitutional special law under that test, and that's because number one, there is a rational interest that the legislature is seeking to protect in that statute. That's the interest I just quoted you from the case. Maximizing revenue for the state, protecting reliable, proven horsemen. The statute is a legitimate class. It's aiming at getting these larger, reliable, proven tracks, and you can move into and out of that class. And Yavapai Downs is a perfect example of that. They raced for 40 days for more than 12 consecutive years after 1992. They were a part of N2. They could have, while they were open for business, entered into source market fee agreements. They closed their doors. That's how they moved out. But it sure looks like, and we're all hoping in this room, they're about to reopen those doors. And when that track does that, they're going to meet this requirement. And it's not just going to be turf. It's going to be Yavapai Downs, too, that meets this provision of the statute. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think moving forward, we should give the next team the same amount of time and maybe discuss rebuttal.
Yes, sir.
3 to 4 minutes.
We've been timing it, so I've got that. Mr. Vance, are you still on the line? I haven't heard him hang up.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you. I'll just take 2 minutes. I know that we've used our time. I wanted to add that not only does the legislative history support the interpretation that Turf Paradise is presenting, but we submitted a supplemental declaration which indicates that when this law was first put into place, that's exactly how this commission interpreted the statute and applied it, because it required that when Turf entered into an agreement, an ADW agreement, that it got the permission of the permittees in other counties before they could take wagers out of that county. So this is all consistent with what with our interpretation. And so we'd urge you to give consideration to that aspect as well. In conclusion, there is a reason why Riito's arguments try to find technical procedural bases to not consider our request at all. That's because the statute itself does not support their position. There's a reason why Riito spends much of its time talking about constitutional arguments as opposed to the statutory language and the requirements of the statute. That's because the statute does not support their position. And there's a reason why Riito doesn't want this commission to consider Mr. Walsh's declaration about what actually, how the statute's been interpreted in the past. That's because it doesn't support their position. The statute does very clearly indicate that there's 3 reasons why this contract is not lawful, and we would request that the commission reconsider its determination and not approve the contract. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you back up the period
For the next one, can we move the, I like to be able to see our stakeholders over to the side. And I'm sure they like to see us. Helpful.
So I have 16 minutes.
Okay, Riito, you have approximately 10 minutes.
16 now.
Mr. McClintock, it's 16 if you include both the times, so.
16, okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Good morning, Director Casillas. Thank you for having us today to talk about this. My name is Mike Foy. I'm here on behalf of the Riito Park Foundation. What you have before you is a statutory interpretation issue involving the ADW statutes. This is the exact issue you had before you 2 months ago. You unanimously reached a conclusion on that issue, and your unanimous decision was correct for reasons that I'll get into in a moment. I appreciate the fact that most of you made the wise decision to not go to law school, and in accordance with that, I'll try to speak in English rather than be an attorney. If I'm failing at that, at any point, please feel free to stop me, and I'll do my best to state it a little better. Before we dive into the real nitty-gritty of these 2 statutes, I think it's important to keep in mind the big picture of ADW in Arizona and the ADW laws in Arizona. And as you know, this type of wagering didn't exist in Arizona prior to 2014, at least not legally. And the legislature changed all that in 2014 through the passage of Senate Bill 1282. And in Senate Bill 1282, the legislature created a very robust regulatory framework for ADW, and it went out of its way to do so. And so it goes without saying that since the legislature did that, that's because it wanted ADW to occur in Arizona. It wanted this type of wagering to occur. Now, under Turf Paradise's claimed interpretation, which gives it a de facto monopoly over ADW in Arizona, that legislative intent of encouraging ADW would be undermined. And the reason I say that is because Turf Paradise announced at this meeting 2 months ago, when it was claiming its monopoly power, that, and I'm going to quote now, they were going to shut down telephone wagering completely. They explained the reason we were going to close them down is because that would drive customers back to OTBs. And I'll note that the only reason Turf Paradise didn't get away with this scheme to shut down ADW is these ADW providers began approaching Reito, and that competition brought Turf Paradise back to the negotiating table. So this claimed monopoly thereafter is contrary to the spirit of the legislation. They have a demonstrated interest in shutting down ADW, so giving them this monopoly power is a bit like letting the wolf guard the sheep. It's just not what the legislature would have intended. So with that background in mind, I'd like to shift focus to the specific statutory sections that you have at issue before you. First, there's subsection M of ARS 5-112, and this is the piece of legislation that Turf Paradise claims requires it to consent to this contract. And there's two problems with Turf Paradise's argument. Both of those problems are apparent from the plain language of the statute itself. And that's very important because the first cardinal rule of statutory interpretation is that when you have a clear and unambiguous statute, you apply that clear and unambiguous language. You don't resort to legislative history or any other fancy tools of construction like that. So, Section 5-12 requires the consent of permittees where advanced deposit wagers are accepted. And I emphasize that word accepted because that's the key word here. Advanced deposit wagers under this Twin Spires contract are not accepted in Maricopa County, in Pima County, or in any other Arizona county for that matter. They're accepted in Oregon. That's where Twin Spires has its wagering facility. It has no physical infrastructure whatsoever in the state of Arizona, and therefore it cannot accept wagers here. And if you look at the definitions in the Interstate Horse Racing Act, I don't want to get too bogged down in the details of those today because I know we have limited time, but they're discussed at page 16 of our brief. Those really make clear that when you're talking about this type of wagering, there's two key locations. There's the place where the wager is made, and there's the place where the wager is accepted. Here, consent was required where the wager is accepted. If the legislature wanted consent where the wager was made, it would have said so, but it didn't. The second problem with Turf Paradise's argument on subsection M is even more obvious, I think. And in fact, I heard counsel concede that the normal reading of a county would be just that, a county. But they want this commission to take that plain language of a county and rewrite the statute, write each county or every county instead of a county. Well, when you have a clear and unambiguous statute, you're not allowed to do that. You have to apply the plain language of the statute. And by the way, this assumes for the sake of argument that they're correct about the accepted issue, which, as we just discussed, they're not. So you don't even get there since we're looking at the place where wagers are accepted. But even if you do, a county and each county are not the same thing. Here, Reito is located in Pima County. It's a county where wagers are accepted. The Reitos approved it. That's all that's required under the contract. And you don't have to take my word for it that a county is different than each county, because if you look about 25 words ahead within subsection M, where we're dealing with consent of the Horsemen's Association, the legislature actually did require consent from the Horsemen's Association representing the majority in each county. So the word each county is within the legislative vocabulary. They know how to say it, and if they wanted to do that, they would have done so. They didn't. They said a county instead. You heard Turf Paradise make a couple arguments to try to get around the plain language of the statute. Legislative history, for example, trying to harmonize it with subsection 5-112N2. With respect to 5-112N2,
that rule of trying to make consistent different statutory interpretations, that doesn't even come into play when you have an unambiguous statute. When you have an unambiguous statute, you just apply the plain language. And more fundamentally, that argument presupposes they're correct about 5-12N2, which, as we'll just discuss in a moment, they're not. The other thing they try to bring in is legislative history. And legislative history, you also do not look at when you have a plain and unambiguous statute. Courts will look at legislative history at times when you have an ambiguous statute and you're trying to make heads or tails of what it means. It's simply not appropriate to do that when you have an unambiguous statute. So that's subsection M. I'd like to turn now to subsection N2. And subsection N is what sets forth the different classes of permittees that are allowed to contract with advanced deposit wagering providers. And to be candid, I'm a little confused about Turf Paradise's argument here because I think you all recall from the commission meeting 2 months ago, they quoted N3 about 3 different times, and we didn't hear about N2. Now we hear about N2, and they're not talking about N3. So I don't know which it is at this point, but I don't think it particularly matters because whichever one you look at, the plain language of the statute favors Reedito's interpretation. Section 5-12N2 lays out 3 different categories of permittees that can contract with advanced deposit wagering providers. And one of those, which I'll read, are permittees that, I'm quoting now, conduct a racing program with the same type of racing on which the advanced deposit wagering is accepted. And Turf Paradise wanted you to look at their little bullet point summary of what they think that means as opposed to the statutory text itself. If you look at the statutory text itself, that's pretty simple. It just means, well, here, Reedito is a permittee. It's contracted with an advanced deposit wagering provider, and it's on the same type of racing, live horse racing, that's accepted under the advanced deposit wagering contract. So that's very simple. In addition, Turf Paradise asked the Commission to interpret 5-112N in a way that would be unconstitutional. And that's the special law argument. Under their interpretation, only permittees in Maricopa County, which as we know is code for only permittees such as Turf Paradise, would be able to enter into these type of contracts. And Article 4 of the Arizona Constitution has something to say about that. Article 4 contains the prohibition of what are called as special laws. Special laws are laws designed to favor a particular corporation or group of corporations as opposed to being enacted for a legitimate legislative purpose. If a law is a special law, it's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court of Arizona, as you can see from our brief, has a three-part test that it uses to determine if a law is unconstitutional. If a law fails any one part of that 3-part test, then it is in fact unconstitutional. So the first part is that there has to be a rational basis for the distinction the law is drawing between a benefited group and an out group, for the lack of a better word. And here Turf Paradise has failed to offer a rational reason for that distinction. It talks about drawing the law so that experienced permittees, such as Turf Paradise, are the ones that benefit, but that doesn't hold up to scrutiny because under their interpretation, a brand new racetrack in Maricopa County could enter into this type of contract, not because they're experienced, just because they happen to have the fortune of being located in Maricopa County. Whereas an experienced racetrack such as Reedito is cut out just because they have the misfortune of being not located in Maricopa County. There's no rational reason for their interpretation. Second, the classification has to encompass all members of a relevant class. Well, assuming Turf Paradise is right, and that the legislature was trying to restrict things to experienced permittees, that doesn't hold up because it excludes Reedito, an experienced permittee. And third, the classification has to be flexible. In other words, it has to allow permittees to move in and to move out of it. Here, under Turf Paradise's interpretation, it can never move out of the protected class because that's linked to something that's already happened, to operating 12 consecutive years, or at least 40 races in a year. That'll always be the case no matter what Turf Paradise does in the future. So
even if you think I'm wrong about, say, 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3 of this 3-part test, it doesn't matter. A law only has to fail 1 out of these 3 parts in order to be unconstitutional. Now, the reason we're bringing up these constitutionality arguments is that the Arizona Supreme Court has a rule, which is if you have 2 interpretations of a statute, one makes it constitutional, the other makes it unconstitutional, you go with the constitutional interpretation. We're asking you to apply that rule here, and it's actually not a particularly difficult decision because our interpretation also isn't in accordance with the plain language of the statute. Finally, I want to briefly address this issue of source market fees that's raised in Turf Paradise's brief, and that relates to subsection 5-112M that requires source market fees to be allocated among the different permittees. I'd like to point out that, well, as an initial matter, to be clear, RITO does not dispute that Turf Paradise is entitled to a share of the proceeds of this contract. Not at all. In fact, if you look at section 3.2 of the contract, RITO commits itself to paying any person required by the ADW law, and accompanying regulations. And consistent with that contractual language, consistent with the law, RITO actually reached out to Turf Paradise to propose and discuss its allocation of source market fees under the contract. Turf Paradise rejected that. They wouldn't even talk about it because they said the whole contract is unlawful. So it's incredibly disingenuous for Turf Paradise to make this argument when in fact it's Turf Paradise that's prevented reaching an arrangement where it can receive source market fees under this contract. RITO is willing to pay the source market fees, and it remains willing to do so. So to close, under both 5-112M and N, RITO's position is supported by the plain language of the statute. You reached the correct decision 2 months ago, and we respectfully request that you once again reaffirm that decision today. That's all I have, unless the commission has any questions.
Actually, I have a question for both of you, both parties. We started this meeting off today with some really exciting news. And, a few meetings ago, we had been given a report about how much money was being spent on legal issues and all that. And I feel like we're on the edge. No matter which way we go, we're back into legal issues. Is there any chance the parties could take a time out, work together, come up with some resolution that is a benefit for the industry as a whole here in Arizona?
Certainly, we're willing to talk, and maybe my client could speak to that better than I could. I assume that the door for dialogue is always open. But I think under approval of this contract that we're requesting, it actually achieves that goal of being good for everybody in Arizona. Because as I was mentioning a second ago, those source market fees are going to get doled out to all of the permittees.
I mean, I'm just feeling like at some point in time, somebody's going to feel like a loser no matter what happens, and we're having meetings full of lawyers in here again. So,
never a good sign.
Sorry.
You have any questions?
I do for Dean.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Did we want to have any comment from Mr. Vance, who's on the phone?
Yes.
Do you have anything you'd like to add, Mr. Vance?
Just one thing, and I do appreciate you guys accommodating me, and I apologize that I cannot be there.
Hold on.
Hang on.
You want to use this?
Mr. Vance.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, go ahead and speak now.
Okay. I'll take off speaker as well. I appreciate you all accommodating me and allowing me to dial in today, and unfortunately I couldn't be there in person. But just one thing I do want to point out, and it frustrates me a little bit on the interpretation of a commercial live racing permittee that's permitted here, and I don't want to rehash all these arguments, but I do. I want to point out that the Senate fact sheet that Turf Paradise did provide, if you look at 2B in that fact sheet, it will separate out the types of different tracks that are permitted, that are separated in a different grammatical way than the way that Turf Paradise is trying to propose. So that 2B3 is basically a track that conducts the same type of racing, which is RITO, which is a thoroughbred track. and something that we've always looked at as still an appropriate party that is a commercial live racing permittee in the state of Arizona that we can contract with. So I just wanted to point that out because the argument that Turf Paradise is presenting relies pretty heavily on Riguito not qualifying as a proper commercial live racing permittee that qualifies under those provisions, and that third provision is pretty clear that they do. So that's my only statement I'd like to make, and otherwise I'm in concurrence with what Riguito has stated.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and congratulations on a great Derby weekend last weekend.
Thank you. It was a little rainy, but we got through it. It was a good weekend for us.
Good race.
I appreciate it.
All right. I would entertain them.
I thought both parties did an excellent job. I'm thoroughly confused, and I make a motion that we go into executive session to talk to our lawyer.
No, they did.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Should I read this before we take a vote? After?
Read it before, please.
Okay.
Get it on the record.
All right. Minutes of and discussions made at an executive session are required by law to be kept confidential and shall not be communicated to any person outside this meeting room, except to members of the board or person who is the subject of the discussion pursuant to ARS 38-431 3A1. The Auditor General in connection with an audit authorized by law, and the Attorney General. So, with that,
It's been moved and
seconded to go into executive session.
Commissioner Garay?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Okay, it's 11:05, and we are breaking the second open session to go into executive session. This is the third open session of the 662nd regular Arizona Racing Commission meeting held May 10th, 2018 at 1110 West Washington, Suite 250, Phoenix, Arizona 85007. All right, we are going back into the third open session of this commission meeting. It is 11:35 a.m. and the roll call is being taken. Commissioner Garay?
Here.
Commissioner Heupel?
Here.
Commissioner Lawless?
Here.
Commissioner McClintock?
Here.
Thank you, and please note that Mr. Carter Vance is again on the telephone.
Okay. Mr. Sims, did you have something you wanted to say?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry Sims, Turf Paradise. During the break, Jay Wells and I spoke, and think he has to speak to his board, that he reports to, but perhaps we can work this out and take this off of the commission.
That would be wonderful.
That was our recommendation.
We were going to suggest you table it and try to get together.
Yeah.
I was listening.
It probably came out of my voice.
Way to go, guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jay.
And just, could somebody close the door back there, please?
Jay Wells, Rito Park Foundation. I'm grateful to you, Jerry, for stepping out in the hallway and sticking your hand out. I think it's really up to us to keep these sort of what are very minor negotiations necessary to go forward. I'm assuming that he's recognizing that we have the right to entertain this contract and be engaged in this contract. This is an illustration and a perfect example of the way that all of us in Arizona, new, old, however long you've been here, got to get together and work together to make this state go forward. We have a surge in the economy, a surge in horses. There's more opportunities, and if we quibble about every opportunity that comes to the surface, we're going to miss them. And so thank you very much, Jerry. I look forward to talking to you, and we'll schedule that meeting soon. Thank you.
Ask any questions you need to ask.
Well, I think that answers
Well, in case they don't reach an agreement, you might want to ask your questions.
Well, if they don't reach an agreement, would we then be back to where we have to?
Yep.
So we could do it at that time, that meeting. I would prefer to keep the positive going.
Okay.
And I would just like to say thanks to Jerry and Jay. We have some momentum going, and let's build on this, and let's make Arizona a great racing state for our horsemen.
Yeah, and I think we want to make sure all parties are involved in this, the horsemen and the tracks, before you guys make any agreements with any outside wagering agencies. Okay.
So
good. So-
then, for the record, we are going to table this matter.
Do we need to make a
we need to
motion
make
to
a
table it?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, who's making the motion?
I'll make a
Okay,
motion.
Mr. Heifel.
All in favor?
And
Aye.
second.
Aye. All opposed?
Okay, and the roll call on that vote is Commissioner Garay,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless,
Yes.
Commissioner Heifel,
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock.
Yes.
Thank you. Then we'll put this on the next regular commission meeting agenda.
All right, thanks, guys. You've turned this into a great meeting. I guess the information reports are next. So, Greg, give us a safety report.
Last month, I asked, mentioned to the commission that each committee would come up and speak on some of the summer plans that they have for the racetrack. So I sent out a letter to all the committees, WEDO and Turf Paradise. So, if Vince, if you're here, if you want to come up and just speak on some of the things you're going to be doing during the summer.
I'm sorry, may I take a quick moment? Mr. Vance, if you would like to hang... Okay, Vance. There we go, thank you.
For the record, Vincent Francie, General Manager of Turf Paradise. First of all, I wanted to extend a cordial welcome to Ann McGovern, the newly appointed General Manager of Yavapai Downs, and to welcome her to the vibrant world of Arizona horse racing. Greg, I believe you wanted me to address what we're going to be doing during the summer. Okay. First of all, let me explain the process. The race meet just ended, and as is customary, I get together with the track superintendent and the plan superintendent to listen to what their priorities are. Then I get with Mr. Sims, and we get all of us together, identify those priorities, and then proceed. So these were just proposed things we're looking at. There's still some other things coming in that would fall under the big umbrella of the capital improvement projects that we do during the summer. These do not include the standard things we do each meet, like the painting of the barns before the horsemen arrive, the control of vegetation and trees on the property, the repair of the roadways. That is standard stuff we do. In addition, this is what we are looking at for the summer projects. This phase 3 of the water projects in the stable area, that's the final of the 3 phases, and that will align K Road with the rest of the stable area, replacing a 2-inch line with a 4-inch line, which brings more water into the horses. I wasn't going to.
Okay. Well, we want to know what that
Come on, Larry.
Go ahead, Vince.
We put him under oath.
They were in the executive session.
Start at the beginning.
That is phase 3 of the water projects in the state area. At the same time that we are, what that I'm getting to feel like I'm in a Fellini movie. What that does is it augments the water for the horses who are in K-Row. And K-Row runs K1 through 12. It's a very popular area. And by going from the 2 to the 4-inch line, it brings more water in. But the other thing that we do, which is equally important, is we rearrange the valves so that each barn has its own shutoff, that in the event of a leak in one of the lines, we can isolate that section while keeping water running to the rest of the areas. After we do the water, there's some electrical we're doing in K-Row, and that's because that particular row of barns, again, K through 12, consume a great deal of electricity when the horses are in session. So we're making a transformer adjustment which will alleviate that problem. This will necessitate the completely paved asphalt of the K-Row because we'll be trenching in there. Other things looking at the plant superintendent, and again, these are just projects we're looking at right now. We prioritize, identify, and then we do them, is the entranceway to the Clubhouse Turf Club. Needs some repair work after many years. So that's something that we'll be looking at. We have a new process that the plant superintendent has come up with
that improves our evap cooling system in the grandstand. As you know, the clubhouse and turf club are air conditioned, and then we're looking at some minor line repairs to the internal aspect of the building. The other thing we do is we get with our horsemen, with the HPPA, to see what projects they have in mind that we might be able to fit in. Again, we look at them, prioritize, and then we initiate.
Okay, is that it, Vince? You don't have something, a little secret you want to...
What's the secret? There's got to be one more item in there.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to the coyote reports.
Yeah.
Jay Wells, Rito Racing. I guess the first thing that's happened, I know y'all probably were aware that we had to suspend our barn construction because of the delays in the county bidding process. That's been picked back up. May is the month where we fund and receive our yearly grant, and so those monies should be coming shortly. And those monies are earmarked basically to offset the shortage that we had on building the extra barns. It also is earmarked for handicap bathrooms and some other things that the plant, sorely needs. If you've been down here, it's an old place, but we're getting it up as fast as we can. So we're excited about it. We're putting in new internet and wireless so that the entire park is wireless. As from the foundation standpoint, we're also secured enough money to build a fourth farmers market pavilion, and that'll make us the largest farmers market in the state of Arizona, something that we're extremely proud about. I guess the best thing about this year is every year, as you know, as we sit here today, we kind of go like, hey, are we going to open up next year? And we got through this. We had a banner year. We're still not completely out of the hole as far as payable things that lingered from the damage done in 2017. But I'm very confident that we're on our way. And with just the whole new attitude in horse racing, let's hope we all ride out of here proud. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Jay, real quick question. I know it's not really, well, maybe safety is more welfare, but I just saw on Facebook there was a bunch of horses that were rescued. You guys have helped out with that?
We were contacted by the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and without going into names, there was a gentleman who had some 37 horses that had been neglected, and they were in literally the stalls and barns looked like a bomb had gone off. It was amazing. In fact, to the point where we were like, can we even get in there and handle these horses? I was actually up here for an HPPA meeting the day that our staff came and got him. Our chairman of our board is Russell True, and he had White Stallion Ranch. So the sheriffs took 14 horses away before we got there, 7 of which were immediately put down, tragically. The other are in the veterinarian's care. The horses had not had human contact, etc. We did a little GoFundMe campaign. We've raised a little over $2,300 so far. And these are not just your average horses. This was a herd that had been quarter horse racing stock. Actually, some beautiful animals in it. And so we'll hopefully get them nursed back to health. Today is the day, the final court date, and at that particular point in time, we can securely plan what to do to the horses. Our tentative plan is that sometime when it gets a little cooler in the fall, that we would actually host at the track a horse auction strictly for rescue horses. As you know, Patty Shirley, all of Rito's got a long history of this sort of thing, so we're glad to continue that tradition, and we'll let you know about it.
Great.
Have a nice summer, gentlemen.
Thanks, Jake. Rudy, do you have a budget update?
So far, we're on track.
Good.
We're doing well.
Good. Is Aiden here for a legislative update? There you are.
Good morning.
Morning.
Afternoonish almost. Got some updates here for you. Just 2 pages.
There's 2 pages. Oh, 2 pages?
Yes. Should be collated.
Oh, thank you.
So for the record, I'm flowing with the Department of Gaming. I wanted to go over this legislative session a little bit. It took us 116 days, 369 bills passed, 16 bills vetoed, 285 bills signed, $10.5 billion budget adopted, and 1 racing bill that sits on the governor's desk right now, and that's 2589 that you have in front of you. This is the fact sheet that I gave you 2 months ago. There was a last-minute amendment on that bill that struck out quite a few provisions, and those provisions are struck out in the fact sheet as well. So I guess we could just go down the list. The amendment eliminates the 0.5 RWA cap that was in the bill initially. The next strike was it removes the limitation for the carry forward, the 20% carry forward for the Department of Gaming. That was eliminated. The department can now carry forward all of its funds from one year to another. It strikes number 3 and replaces it with establishes an unarmed combat sub-account. As you know, that racing and boxing are related financially. This creates a sub-account that separates out the funds, and this was mirrored in the state budget. So what can happen now is all the licensing money still goes through to the Racing Regulatory Fund, but everything else gets put in that sub-account, and that sub-account is used up by boxing and MMA first before it taps anything to Racing Regulatory Fund. So there should be a lesser impact we're foreseeing in future years of boxing MMA on the Racing Regulatory Fund. So that's a positive thing. If you flip over to the next page, it maintains the naming convention of division for the Division of Racing. There was significant changes in the bill that switched all mentions of division over to department, back to Department of Racing. That was stricken from the bill. It maintains the Director of Gaming as the director that oversees racing still. There was a provision in the bill that established a racing director separate, while in statute that exists right now, the Director of Gaming can appoint a deputy director to oversee racing, which is what we have in this case with Director Casillas. So everything is status quo there. I did want to point out that apart from 2589, it has, I think, 4 more days on the governor's desk. So he has 3 options. He can veto it, he can sign it, or he can leave it alone, which in 4 more days it would become law. So then there'd be the standard 90-day waiting. So it should become law a little bit later in the summer, probably around August. And the budget highlights. The division was appropriated $1.8 million. The Breeders' Awards were continued on the Racing Regulatory Fund, so that's $250,000 coming out of the Racing Regulatory Fund off the top. So the Breeders' Awards will continue through that, and these are budget changes. The County Fair Racing Fund, which was, if passed in 2589, if that becomes law, the County Fair Racing Fund will take out $100,000 out of the Racing Regulatory Fund off the top again. So effectively, instead of the $1.8 million that the department would be working with as appropriated money, after you take the Breeders' Awards and you attach the County Racing Fund that we're going to have sequester that $100,000, it would basically be effective about $1.53 million is what we have to work with. If you look at our budget for FY18, it looks, if we maintain that, we should be okay. Obviously, there's all sorts of things that happen during the race meets, but right now on paper, the department looks good. While 2589, it struck the 0.5 RWA cap, the amendment struck that in the bill, the budget did put it in place to continue it for another year. So instead of it being enshrined in statute for all of time or under a session law in a bill, it's put in the budget. So the legislature revisits it every year. So that's maintained, but it's just in a budget burden. Those are all of the changes that I have for 2589 and for the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I see item 10 is going to make one of us buy a racehorse.
Yes, that is, Mr. Chair, that is still there. Yeah.
All right. We'll let Roy get a racehorse.
Got 6 dogs at home.
Since you can't be a dog person, you got to buy a racehorse. All right. No, I don't have any questions. It compares pretty much favorably with previous year's budget.
Mr. Chair, yes, there wasn't any large cuts or anything like that. It really carried over budget-wise. It carried over in kind from last year with the 1.8 being consistent. I think that last year it kind of reestablished our baseline to work from. So it is a little bit more stable this year from what we saw last year. So no big changes there. The only real change would be that extra $100,000 for the county racing fund. And so now counties, if this bill passes, can apply for that $100,000 that we'll have sequestered off to the side. And that'll run for 2 years.
All right. Thanks, Aiden.
Thank you very much.
Bills for place making by a horse.
When was the last time we had harness racing?
When that track out there closed.
Down on Bowlesville.
Yeah.
Sorry, can we move on to
All right, committee reports. American Greyhound Racing.
I'll keep it short. We just actually have something to say for once.
Good.
Jeff Huff, American Greyhound Racing. I'm pleased to announce that we have hired a new director of operations. His name is Aaron Feinberg. He's actually coming from Florida Gaming Commission. So he'll be here at the end of the month, and we'll be working with Greg to get him up to speed as soon as possible.
Great.
Any questions?
Any questions? I already know what's going on. Thank you. Thanks. County fairs. Too bad nobody's here. You're going to have some money this year if you want it. Rito.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm glad to be able to speak today. Of course, the last month when I was here, I didn't have much voice, so it was kind of forced. But we had a pretty successful meet, as Jay stated. We were up both on import, export, just terrific in the attendance, highlighted by the Clydesdales. We're doing 3 dark days with the Triple Crown, and the German game was really a fun day out there. We did give a little support to Sonoida. We were, in the same feeling of working all together and how we plan on working together with Turf and with Yavapai. We were able to loan them TVs and tables and track equipment and anything that we can do to lend a hand and help send the signal out there, so that was good. My highlight, as always, is you always hear me talk about the students. I had some great support from the University of Arizona from the students. We went beyond the racetrack management program, racetrack industry program. We had equine students, we had photography students, we had journalism students working this year. They did everything from photo finish to timing to graphics to the racing office, social media. Our handicappers were really unique because we had them in the paddock as we sent our signal out, and we were able to do it both English and Spanish, and we get a lot of play out of that. So we're very excited about the way that happened. For those of you that keep an eye out in the industry newsletters, the Pollock Report, we've got some great articles on highlighting each and every student, or not every single student, but they're doing articles on each student, and it's kind of what got you into racing, what'd you do at Rito, what's your dream, and it's helping them get some great jobs and internships.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Turf Paradise.
Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is David Johnson. I'm the Assistant General Manager at Turf Paradise. Just wanted to give you a quick update on the handle report for the meet that we just finished up. As you know, we finished up on May 6th. And for all intents and purposes, pretty successful. Total handle on the good side here, we were up 6%, which total handle this year was $251 million compared to $236 million prior year. And where we saw the biggest gains were in the live racing, so this is also very encouraging. Live handle on track was up, and especially in the out-of-state market, we were up over 14%, which was over $18 million. So that was the strong part of the meet, and we're very, very happy to work with the Horsemen. Horsemen did a great job this year, and I think it's a direct reflection of what they've done, putting together a good race meet for us, because the rest of the industry was not nearly as strong, and you can see that in the OTB and simulcast handle, because there was a little bit of a drop off there, but as far as the live meet and Turf Paradise, very good.
All right. Any questions? Thanks, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Tucson Greyhound.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Okay, Optional Industry Stakeholder Association updates. Arizona County Racing. Arizona Greyhound Association. Arizona Quarter Horse Racing Association.
Chairman, I'm Loretta Brazier, Executive Director of the Arizona Quarter Racing, and I'm honored to be able to speak to you. We had the Arizona Quarter Racing sponsors 9 futurities and derbies every year at Turf Paradise. All of them have boasted over $30,000, and we even had a $60,000 one this year. So we have had a really good meet at Turf Paradise. We also support racing, quarter horse racing at Rito. It was a wonderful meet. Santa Cruz County just finished their meet, their 2-day meet, and it was wonderful. I don't have any of the stats or anything like that, but I can't brag enough about what they've done down there. I mean, the little county with no money to start with, zero funds to start with. You know, it's a clean facility. It's a great facility. They have lots of people. They had a Sunday, of course, Saturday is always their Kentucky Derby Day, and they really do it up great, and they have a large crowd for that. And then on Sunday, this year, they started a family day. So on Sunday was family day with the stick horse races and all the things that they do for the kids. Another thing they've done there, and I really like the county, when the individual counties do this, is they bring in something of their own. And they started last year with a ranch horse race, which was quite interesting this year. We had 7. First year they only had 4. But they go out to the ranches and they get one of the wranglers and one of the ponies, and they deck out in their hats and their chaps and everything. And it's quite a little deal. So sorry no one was here to report on the counties, but I wanted to give you an update. I do go to all the county races and support them all that I can. So that's Mike Harlow and I have already started on our schedule for next year. We don't see any, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we're going forward with the same thing that we had this year. So we look forward to a good meet next year.
Great.
Any questions?
No, just congratulations on a good year. Thanks, Lorena. Arizona Thoroughbred Breeders Association.
Good morning, Chairman, Director, Commissioners. My name is Debbie Zimmerman. I'm here from the Arizona Thoroughbred Breeders. We're happy to report we just had a great day for our festival, and Mr. Gilter was honored at our banquet.
All right.
I'm so happy to go back and report to our committees and our director that the breed money is still there. And I do want the Yavapai to know that we are in full support. So if they need anything from us, we are happy to help.
That's great.
Thank you.
Debbie. Thank you. HBPA.
Chairman, Commissioners, Director, Leroy Gussman, Arizona HBPA. As you know, we just wrapped up our meet with I felt quite a end of the meet that was very successful with the breed day that Debbie just mentioned, as well as the Kentucky Derby Day. I think Kentucky Derby Day was one of the biggest days I've ever seen at Turf Paradise in my 2 years here. There was people everywhere. The handle was the largest I've seen. And I want to mention that one of the great big concerns of the horsemen and of the track was our purse fund. Mr. Sims was very gracious in maintaining our purse levels, which did create an overage, but with the increased handle and with the 0.5 RWA, we were able to keep our overpayment at a lesser amount than last year. We're very excited about that. So that's much less money we have to repay. So, overall, I think it was a very successful year for the horsemen there. I do want to mention, I did take a day when we were on a shorter meet there, race schedule, and went down to Tucson, spent a day with Jay. Got a tour of the Jinx farm, the stable area of the house. Quite a lot of history down there for many of you who've never seen it. It's worth going to see. He also took me around Tucson, showed me all the OTBs, and we had a great day together in explaining and telling me the plans of Rito in the future, so I was pretty excited with that. We also had our second stakeholders meeting that was chaired by our president, Bob Hutton. We had all 3 tracks there, and I would say it came out a very successful meeting. They all seemed very anxious to work together, and I want to commend Mr. Hutton for the great job he's done in getting them all together and getting the issues on the table and being able to talk about them as a group. I look forward to working with Greg this summer on some real changes if this bill gets through. And that's all I have.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Leroy? Thank you very much. J-Corps, update on Yavapai Data. Gonna race this Memorial Day?
On May 10th, we got our temporary permit, so thank you.
What year?
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah.
That rivaled what Tommy would do. That was pretty good.
The Jockey Guild. Tom, you have anything to report on?
No, never seen them.
They do exist. One time.
Are there any current events affecting the Racing Commission that need to be discussed or put on the agenda for future meetings? All right. The next regular Arizona, this is an announcement. The next regular Arizona Racing Commission meeting scheduled to be held on Thursday, June 14th is canceled. I think we've accomplished everything that could be accomplished. The next regular Arizona Racing Commission meeting is tentatively scheduled for at 11 a.m. Thursday.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Thursday, September 13th, 2018, in this building, in this room. Please remember to check the Racing Division's website or contact Cassie Goodwin at 602-771-4263 for current information.
Do we have a call to the public?
Call to the public.
Did it happen?
No, everybody spoke.
Okay. So a motion to adjourn then?
I so moved.
Second.
We're going to give it to Tom. Okay, Mr. Lawless, Mr.
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Mr. McClintock,
Yes.
Mr. Heupel. Okay, this meeting is adjourned as of 12:05 p.m. Thank you very much. Very much. Very much. Very much. Very much. Very much. Very much.